On Saturday, the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, did lay out his party's platform. Carney called it a plan for the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre called it a spending bonanza.
I know that when you're in a crisis, you have to act with purpose and with force. Your government needs to step in.
Mark Carney's Liberals are even more costly than Justin Trudeau's Liberals.
Okay, the Power Panel is back to talk about all of this. Lisa, I'd like to start with you if I can. I mean, the headline from the Liberal platform is $130 billion in spending and tax cuts over 4 years. That's going to add $225 billion to the federal debt. Now, they don't have included in that any of the revenue and increased economic activity they say their measures will generate. So it's the headline that stands, right? So what do you make of what we saw from Mark Carney on Saturday?
Well, I think it's a good indicator of why they're doing well in the Maritimes, to be honest, David. If you take a look at the demographics of the Maritime provinces, they run about 22 to 25% over 65 years of age. And those who are over 65 years of age really don't have a problem with the spending that is coming from a Liberal government. In fact, they embrace it. They enjoy it. They are not concerned about what's happening in terms of how the spending is going to impact the future. And I say that because I find it very frustrating, because I look at the younger demographic who are really concerned about it because they're the ones that are going to be stuck with the bill. So all of that to say, I can see why the message of spending and spending more is going to resonate in Atlantic Canada, given their demographics, and why it would be a little harder for Pierre to punch through talking about the problems associated with spending that much money, because he's talking to a population that votes that isn't really interested in being concerned about that spend.
Cheryl, I wonder when I look at this platform, and I don't know what we'll see from the Conservatives tomorrow, but they all seem to be using the PBO baseline for the deficit. And I'm not even sure how accurate that is with everything Donald Trump has done and will do. You know, like, this is not anyone's being dishonest. It's just everything's changed. Does a big deficit matter to Canadians in this election right now? I mean, it did when I was growing up in the 90s, but I'm not so sure in 2025. What's your take?
I think it still matters, but I think it's not about necessarily like what you're spending alone. It's about what you're getting for that money. And when I think, when I look at these platforms rolled out over the weekend and I look at the Liberal platform that we're talking about, I'm thinking about it from, you know, my time inside a campaign and how difficult platform development is, because there's so many things to consider and there's so many strategies. And in this case, I think the Liberals have put forward a platform that's really hard for the Conservatives to compete with. I mean, yes, there's a lot of spending in this, but the biggest pieces of that spending are tax cuts and the canceling of the capital gains tax, which are both things that the Conservatives want to do as well. And then they've basically set up the rest of their spending to say we're going to spend on defense, we're going to spend on national infrastructure projects, and we're going to spend on housing, all things the Conservatives support as well. So I mean, these are always strategic documents, but in this case, those are things that are really, really tough for Pierre Poilievre to say those are bad ideas and bad things to spend on when he himself wants to spend on the same things. Yeah,
Rob, that's what I wonder about when I say deficits don't matter. I mean, obviously they matter. I just mean in terms of people making up their minds to vote. And in an election, in a political cycle where it's like, we got to do something about the military, we got to do something about housing, we got to get ports going, we got to invest in transmission, we got to do infrastructure. There's no way forward without some added debt if you're going to tackle those things, it seems.
I don't know. I look at when it was released. It was released on a Saturday during Easter weekend. I see that as almost the equivalent of they tossed it out the door of the bus, the tour bus, as it was going by the meeting with the reporters. The headlines that came out of it were, I thought, not good headlines for the Liberals. Spending more than Justin Trudeau. What is the brand of Mark Carney? The brand is sober, if not sepulchral, and grim realization. We used to talk about thematics when we were here, when I was here at CBC, and talk about coming up with a theme of the day, and we would string together the pearls on that theme, on that narrative theme, the necklace. Well, you know, the narrative theme has to be, these are very tough times. We're going to have to sacrifice, some have said. And I've heard Mark Carney say similar words to that. I didn't see a lot of sacrifice here. I didn't see it underlying, I didn't see a strong connection made between this document and the menace, the Trump menace. I know. Really? I heard it a bit today, but in terms of the coverage that I saw, and the way people treated it. No, it was about more spending. I think that Mark Carney is a serious guy, and he is a banker to the core. He wasn't going to fluff these numbers. Now, that doesn't mean that they're written in tablets of stone with a hammer and chisel. We all know that they're going to change. And there's a certain amount of pixie dust involved with all of this, and a certain amount of guesswork, because we don't know what the impact yet and how widespread the impact yet is going to be of the tariffs. But doing things like abandoning fiscal anchors, I think, is the kind of thing that breeds cynicism and saps the credibility of all governments. And they've abandoned some fiscal anchors that were there just a few months ago. And I'm not sure that that's a great thing for Mr. Carney, for the Liberals, and for politics in general.
So, Jono, to continue with the thematic themes, when I looked at it, what I noticed was how the spending, the proportions of it have shifted. That Justin Trudeau was very much expand the role and scope and scale of what core government does and run up deficits that way. The ratio is almost flipped. Like, this is money that's going to go into capital purchase and economic activity. And I think this is what they're trying to get at with their spend less and invest more, which is almost too clever to be fully understood. So it runs up debt, but it's not with a government program. It's something that it builds things. Is that too complicated as a closing argument for Mr. Carney, do you think?
I think that's too complicated for an argument. I think the argument is pretty simple. Donald Trump, the economy, these are measures that we absolutely need to take. That is where the big chunk of the expenses are. The tax cuts are because people are going to be going through really tough times, and it's trying to make cost of living a little bit more affordable, less taxes. Housing, defense, these are the big ticket issues. That's what people need. Infrastructure spending, when you're in a recession, Stephen Harper did it. Most economies do that when you're facing a recession or you're in one. So this is reacting to the Trump tariffs and the economic tumult that we're going through and will be going through. That is the message. They need to repeat it over and over again. They can't be distracted, in my opinion, by other issues. That has to be the only issue for the last 7 days. Yes, Pierre Poilievre hasn't come out with it'll be tomorrow, I guess. Okay, he's been a leader for 2 years and been begging for an election and still doesn't have a platform now 5 days before it'll be. He has $140 million in either new expenses
billion.
Billion. 140 billion, which is more than the Liberals.
Yeah. Elections are all about billions, yeah.
Yes, in new either spending or in tax cuts. Well, he said dollar for dollar is how it's going to work. What is he cutting? That's a lot of cutting. I know he announced $10 billion in consultants that he's going to cut. That's not going to balance the book. So where is he cutting? Efficiencies, all of these magical. He even talked about, I think it was Saturday, $70 billion in revenue he's going to magically create from new natural resource revenue that's going to come into the country. That's certainly not going to happen tomorrow or in a year. I know he's going to. If he wins, he's going to have, authorizations for projects quickly, but doesn't mean that the revenue is going to be coming in quickly. So his magical math, I'm not sure about either. Well,
look, some of his tax cuts will have a revenue-generated component to it. And they've shown us the homework on this. Like the stuff to spur housing growth will lead to, extra profits and income in the construction sector. And some of that, will spur things back. But, Lisa, kind of one of the things I noticed as a through line from Carney yesterday was that when the private sector is uncertain, the government must act. And that seems to be his justification for the spending, because whoever wins this, the uncertainty all of this causes, the private sector is going to be reluctant to make big decisions and make big spends. So when Mr. Poilievre focuses aggressively on the deficit, I mean, what does he need to deliver tomorrow to show an economic growth and fiscal balancing plan? And can you do it with all of that uncertainty and all the promises?
Well, the reason why there's business uncertainty in this country is because of the last 10 years of a Liberal government creating the uncertainty in the economy and not investing when they said they were going to invest, and not encouraging business investment and productivity. And all of a sudden they're going to do it now. And I don't buy it for a second. I don't think they have the capabilities or the competence to be able to implement. No matter how great Mark Carney is, he's only one man and he can't do it all himself. And they haven't been able to get out of their own way in the last 10 years. So how do they expect they're going to get it done this time? That's what I want to know from Canadians. I don't know how they think that this can possibly be done. As for what is going to happen with respect to Pierre and his, well, tomorrow we will see exactly how he plans to move forward. They've been thinking about this for a long time, obviously for 2 years. It's about growing that top line. It's about bringing in more revenues. It's about listening to what big companies have said in terms of what they do need in order to have investment in the country, to give them the signal that they need in order to create investment. And I don't know whether or not Mark Carney has listened to the other companies, because quite frankly, he is still extremely silent on, I think, the crucial piece of national security and the national economy, and that is whether or not we're going to run pipelines to Tidewater in this country to diversify our energy market. And he's silent on it, absolutely silent. Well, so unless we understand from him what he's going to do there, I don't think we can actually take for any kind of seriousness with respect to his numbers.
What's the missing piece of the position on pipelines? I mean, he said he will use the extraordinary powers of the federal government to accelerate review processes. And, you know, the one project, one timeline, he stopped short of being willing to force it over the objections of a province and, I believe, First Nations. What's the missing part of that?
The missing part of it is the Impact Assessment Act in and of itself is not just what it says about one project, one assessment. It has a whole bunch of other things in there that are annoyances. We have a part of the Competition Act that goes to greenwashing that he doesn't talk about. We have a part of an emissions protocol in Alberta that he doesn't talk about either, that he doesn't want to step away from there. I mean, there are lots of little pieces that have ground this country into a standstill when it comes to building infrastructure associated with the energy industry in the last 10 years. And they know it. And he's silent on it.
Yeah, they have suggested some sort of flexibility or willingness to be flexible on the emissions cap, but they still believe in the emissions cap as an instrument, and that is not something the oil patch and the gas producers are in favor of. I think it's very safe to say.
Or Canadians, David. It's not just industry. Canadians have said time and time again they are supportive of our fossil fuel industry, of our energy industry, and they want to see pipelines built. So I hope when he's thinking about what kind of a mandate he may be getting from the Canadian public on the 28th, that he does not interpret this as a free-for-all on the way that he wants to approach it from an environmental point of view.
Okay, Cheryl, your thoughts on what Pierre Poilievre needs to deliver tomorrow, because he's put a lot of, he's going to keep the programs that exist, he's going to cut some taxes, he's going to do his own stuff, and yet he's promised this dollar-for-dollar balanced budget position. I mean, can you deliver all of those things and spend on things like defense and housing and infrastructure at the scale the country apparently needs?
Listen, I don't think you'll be shocked to hear my hopes are not high. Like throughout this campaign and throughout his time as leader, Pierre Poilievre has been a guy that comes up with really good rhymes and really great talking points. And to his credit, they have worked with a whole crowd of people. And at this point in the campaign, those are the people they've now turned their efforts to getting those people to the polls. And I don't believe that the people who have supported him for the last 2 years and the people who are turning out for his rallies are just waiting to see how he balances his budget to decide how they're going to vote. So truthfully, I think, probably all of the parties, the Conservatives releasing their platform is probably inconsequential. But sort of an aside, I don't think this is what someone who's trying to be a front runner or trying to be prime minister, I don't think this is what their campaign looks like. Coming out days after all of the other platforms released, spending today answering questions with, snarky comebacks to say, when you hear Liberal numbers, you should be very scared. Like, that's not the positioning of someone who wants to be prime minister. The positioning would be to come out with your platform first, to say, we've been thinking about this for 2 years now. We have thoughtful plans, and we know you've been worried about how we would implement them. Well, don't worry. We've thought long and hard about this, and here's the document. So truthfully, I don't think this is going to move anybody, and I don't think it's going to be consequential.
Rob, what are you looking for tomorrow? Lisa made the point that, Mark Carney's only one man, and let's face it, so much of the Liberals' success to this point in the campaign hinges on his appeal. But we also know who his finance minister is and will probably continue to be. I don't know who Mr. Poilievre's finance minister would be should they win the election on this. So what does he need to put on the table tomorrow in terms of a plan and its credibility, and who would help implement it?
Just a realistic plan to deal with the restructuring, the rewiring, the replumbing of the Canadian economy over the next 4 or 5 years. Nothing more than that.
Nothing more than that. Yeah, it sounds very simple, Can we find a blade for my hair to grow back as well?
And so when I think Jonathan is right. When he talks about efficiencies, because the Liberal plan has, I can't remember how many billions. That
28
$29 billion.
$20, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's a billion? You know, friends at this
That's right.
stage. Yeah.
It's like
I'm fact checking you.
just a quick wave of the pixie dust, and they find efficiencies. With the Conservatives, it's going to be lobbyists. They're going to cut back on lobbyists. As people
Consultants, not lobbyists. Consultants.
That's right.
Consultants.
That's right.
Kind of the same, but yeah, I hear you.
Okay, but they're all part of the community that has grown outside of government, even as government has grown, even as we get more and more people working for government. People like to remind me that I've been around here a long time, and I have, since the Earth's crust was cooling, essentially. I have never seen more lobbyists, more consultants. I have never heard of anybody who is talking, any political leader who is not talking to lobbyists and consultants. And that includes Mr. Poilievre. We all know people around
His
town.
war room's full of them. His campaign was run by
that's
one.
right.
I mean, it's
And
just the way politics is right now.
That's right. You get your advice where you can. So I'm mark me down as skeptical when it comes to lobbyists and consultants being cut in a drastic way.
Okay. Well, look, we'll see the numbers. We'll see how it's released. We'll see if we get a technical briefing and interview, an explanation, but we'll see.